What I'm trying to do, and I'm not trying to trap you or trick you.
No.
I'm just trying to get you to concede that in a period since 1948, there have been things on both sides. I'm not trying to equivocate.
No, you are 100% doing it both sides of genocide, and it seems like he's doing it on every possible angle he can. It's like, okay, well, let's talk a little bit about land partition. You know, let's talk about the Balfour Declarations. And are you willing to say something nice and also something mean about your opponent or your other side? Because you are obviously on one side and they're on the other side, so can you say something nice? Or at least say something critical about your own team as well? What is the fucking point of any of this as people are undergoing genocide right now? I don't know if you all saw it. These two have squared off in the past. It created viral sensations at the early moments past October 7th. Bassem Youssef, the comedian from The Daily Show and stand-up comedian in his own right, came onto Piers Morgan's show and absolutely did a masterclass in comedy. He was playing a character the entire time. He was basically trying to reinforce a lot of the worst aspects of the rhetoric that both Ben Shapiro and Piers Morgan put out there, and was basically doing a hyperbolic version of it. You know, just being like, oh, no, I'm with you. I think that we should get in there and we should kill all of those horrifying terrorists, every last one of them. I just want to know, how many should we do? Like, how many kids do we need to kill? The terrorist children. Should we 50,000, 100,000? Will that make you happy? Should we kill 500,000? It's like, I know you're doing a bit right now. He's like, no, I'm not doing a bit at all. I genuinely, let's get the sons of bitches. Let's get those sons of bitches. Like Ben Shapiro said, let's kill them all. We need to kill them all. I'm just here wondering when we know that we won. So I'm asking you, when enough basically women and children being slaughtered in pursuit of us killing those sons of bitches, when we have a blood toll, I guess. Did you have like a quantum of blood that you need to show to be able to justify it all? And it was obviously very, very viral. It was shared widely. It was a bit of a sensation. To me, as someone, again, who admires comedians and comedy especially, it was, again, something very, very powerful. It's rare you see a comedian who's, A, capable of committing to something to that degree, for something this serious and this horrifying, and then use it as a method of kind of flipping everything else and holding up a mirror to the faces of some of the grossest people on the planet. That was the first one. That going super viral, I guess, rather than teach Piers Morgan anything, made him think, whoa, money. And so he's like, well, we could definitely do more of this. So they ended up meeting a second time, because that first time was remote, the second time was in person. And that one was a lot calmer, a lot more friendly. Piers had clearly seen that the internet was like having a time with him, so I guess he wanted to be more buddy-buddy. And Bassem was so respectful during that, while simultaneously, again, clowning on this man profoundly. He brought a bunch of olive oil that came from olives in the West Bank. He got Piers Morgan to try it because he really wanted him to try this olive oil that he'd gotten there. And as Piers Morgan was eating it and saying that it was delicious, Bassem was like, yes, it is. And if you didn't know, the IDF is actually excavated over 100,000 olive trees in occupied territory, so we're no longer going to be able to get the olives necessary to make this delicious olive oil anymore. And Piers is just oblivious at that point. He's like, oh, no, it's really, really good. Oh, delicious. It is delicious. It is worth saving. So I'm very curious. Well, how was round 3? You know, the third encounter.
A year ago this week, I interviewed an exiled Egyptian comedian about the aftermath of October the 7th. It was a time of intense anger and passion. Bassem Youssef's jarring and satirical take became globally iconic. A month later, we met again, face-to-face, in his adopted home city of Los Angeles. And Bassem has since become an unwitting global spokesman for the Palestinian cause and against the way it's been reported by Western media. Well, more than a year in, the war rages on. There's a lot to catch up on. For the first time ever in the Uncensored studio here in London, Bassem Youssef rejoins me. Bassem, great to see you.
Great to see you too.
Finally in London, yes. My home city, finally. Extraordinary that it's been a year. When you think back to that first interview that we did, that 23 million people watched around the world, and I still get asked about it all the time. Just take me back to how you were feeling then. It was so... In the immediate aftermath of October the 7th, Israel's response was coming very hard at the time. What was in your mind at the time when you did that interview and the way you conducted it?
I was very scared. I was advised by my managers and agents not to do the interview because I could lose my career. And I I just took it because, and I actually, as a matter of fact, your producers asked me a couple of times, and I said no because,
really?
and then I said like I had to do it.
I want to play, just for those who haven't seen it, there aren't many, but let's take a look at some of that first interview.
Those Palestinians, they're very dramatic. Israel killing us. But they never die. I mean, they always come back. You know, they're very difficult to kill, very difficult people to kill. I know because I'm married to one. I tried many times, couldn't kill her.
I mean, there's a dark humor there, and I understand why, because...
No, it's not dark humor. I try to get to her every time, but she uses our kids as human shields. I can never take her out. I really applaud Israel for doing one thing that no military force in the world does. Because I heard Ben Shapiro and I heard Ron DeSantis, and they said Israel is the only military force in the world that warns civilians before bombing them. I mean, how fucking cute. That is so nice of them. Because with this logic, if Russian troops started warning Ukrainians before bombing their houses, we're cool with Putin, right? I mean, okay, Habibi, you have warned them, go invade, it's fine, you have done your job.
Piers is such a media whore to like play these clips and acknowledge what a profoundly important moment this was in terms of like, you know, the bravery of a comedian to do something like that, while he himself is the one getting absolutely mocked ruthlessly there. And then realizing, oh yeah, it seemed to really resonate with the world. Something like 23 million people ended up watching that. It's certainly, you know, viral gold. Can we make a little bit more today, my good friend?
It was a brilliantly devastating technique you used in that interview, which took me a while to work out what you were doing and why you were doing it. It was very powerful, resonated with many people very closely. Where do you think we are with this war now? And in fact, not just the war, obviously, in Gaza, but the wider war that's raging now in Lebanon, the threats against Iran and so on, the whole thing.
I mean, Israel is defending itself, right? I mean, that's what the Western media is telling us.
They would say they are.
Yeah, yeah, and I want to buy into it. I'm trying to convince my.
Can you buy into any of their logic that they believe they are defending themselves?
Okay.
Do you believe them that they believe that?
Let's put that on the test. So if Israel is defending itself, it's defending itself against an imminent danger, like an existential threat. I don't understand if, for example, Macron would announce that he will impose an embargo in Israel's arms, and then Israel goes and bombs the French oil facilities in Lebanon. How is that defending themselves? There's like a group of American doctors who were in Gaza and came back, and they reported seeing tens of children with sniper shots in their heads and necks. How is that defending themselves? Just a couple of days ago, we saw a little kid being shot by a drone. His family came to help him, and then they were all killed. How is that defending itself? I mean, I hear it, but I just don't see it.
But do you believe that fundamentally Israel believes it is acting in self-defense?
He just answered your question. You're not listening to a word he's saying. No. The answer is no.
Defense.
Israel can believe whatever they want. I'll tell you a story that actually can tell you exactly how Israel... I'm from Egypt, you understand this, you don't know this, right?
Yeah.
April 1970, there was an attack of an Egyptian school in the middle of Delta, 100 kilometers from where my parents were born. It's called Bahr al-Bakr. On that day, Israel bombed a school, killing 30 students. Now, what was so interesting, going back in history, this was the headline of the New York Times of the day, and it says 30 pupils in Egypt said to die in raid. Said to die, the passive voice. Which raid? Who did the raid? We don't know. And then you read it. This is Moshe Dayan. He was the defense minister of Israel at the time. He said, the target had been a military structure that had been photographed from air both before and after the raid. What could have happened here was irresponsibility of high orders from the Egyptians that they set aside a floor or some room for civilian purposes such as a school. Now, do you believe that? You don't, right? It's ridiculous. And the fact is that the New York Times then, same as New York Times there, covering for it. But there was one thing that caught my attention. They said no mention was made of the use of napalm in the attack. I said, why would we have such a disclaimer? It's because 3 months ago, Israel bombed a civilian metal plant, killing 70 workers with napalm. So this, when I hear Israel defend itself, when I hear the IDF, they're liars. And I'm sorry to say, but they are.
Do you categorize what Hamas has been doing, particularly on October the 7th, what Hezbollah did within hours of October the 7th and carried on for the next year, what the Houthis have done, a lot of it orchestrated by, doubtless, the Iranian regime. Do you categorize that as resistance, as freedom fighting? Or are there elements of all those groups who are genuinely terrorist in their thinking?
Let's get into the both sides on genocide stuff. At this stage, too. More than a year into it.
Well, you know, someone's a terrorist is other one's.
Yeah, but how you categorize it.
How I categorize it? Yeah. I mean, like I'm an American citizen. Of course, I don't want to come back and find the FBI raiding my house. So yes, of course, they're terrorists.
Do you believe that?
Well, at the advice of my lawyer, I would say
well,
that they're terrorists.
I don't think you'd be banned from going back to America.
You think?
They were terrorists.
You know what happened to Scott Ritter? He was the former UN inspector of nuclear weapon in Iraq.
He's a convicted pedophile.
Yeah, but like when he was raided a few months ago,
Clean up your room.
It was because he was talking against Israel. Asa Winstanley, he was a British journalist in London, and his house was raided just last week because he talked about Israel. And this is actually, Piers, what I like about you is that you are a fierce warrior against cancel culture, right?
Yeah.
If you cancel people for their opinion, we're not living in a free world anymore, right?
I totally agree.
So, for example, you have Robert Saleh, who was the coach of the NFL Jets. He wore like a small Lebanese flag, and he was cancelled. I mean, I don't know. It's interesting. I came to America, and I was so happy that I can speak about anyone I want, and then suddenly it's like, oh, you can do whatever you want, unless if it's like.
It is. I mean, it's tangible to me when I go to America, far more than it is in the UK, for example. The support for Israel is pretty rock solid in terms of their political class, in terms of much of the media, if not all of the media. It's more tangible in America than it is in most other countries.
Yeah.
Including here.
Yeah.
A lot more criticism of Israel here than there is in America.
Yeah, and yet you have Israel having a crazy control on the political apparatus, whether in America or in here. I mean, 13 out of 25 of the labor cabinet here are funded by Israeli lobbies. 126 out of 355 MPs are funded by Israel. I mean, out of those 13 members of cabinet is the prime minister himself, his counselor, his deputy, the home secretary, the foreign secretary, and the secretary of the treasury, who oversees the arms shipments to Israel. So I don't understand why. I mean, I think we should talk about that more about anything, because that is actually what gives Israel the cover for what they're doing.
I mean, my take on Israel's government is that Netanyahu, to get back into power, aligned himself with some very hard right-wing people who've spoken in a very genocidal language about what they really want to do with Gaza and Palestinian people, and that he should go and they should go, and there should be new leadership in Israel, but that there should also be no place in power or government going forward for a group like Hamas after what they did on October the 7th.
He's still doing the both sides thing, and he's also doing the both sides thing while trying to like posture that he's somehow very noble on this issue, just being like, hey, by the way, unlike my contemporaries, I am willing to acknowledge that there's a far-right government in Israel, and they are doing some, let's just say, unsavory things, and they've also stated they want to do some pretty bad things as well, so that's not great. But also Hamas, you know, Hamas is super profoundly evil, and so, I mean, in Gaza, when they're deciding and electing who's going to be the next leader, there's nothing fucking left. I don't know in what world you're living. I don't know if you haven't seen the drone or aerial footage or satellite photos of that region. Like, I mean, if you're like, well, when they meet in Parliament for next, what Parliament? They blew Parliament up. Well, when they organize and like, where? There's nothing. The whole area is destroyed and decimated.
Would you agree with me?
Well, I'm not a Palestinian, so I cannot really.
What's your view?
Well, what's my view? Oh, yeah, I understand the view of, well, there's two things about it. First of all, when you say that Netanyahu and Smotrich and Ben Gvir should go, it's as if as the rest of the Israeli political scene is peaceful. As a matter of fact, more than 90% of Israelis in a poll said that they should do more in Gaza. Over 70% of Israelis said that they should actually stop the aid the humanitarian aid in Gaza. But let's talk about how, yeah, I understand the thing. Like, if you gave them a state, it would be rewarding terrorists, right? And we understand, like, you know, I mean, I have to be fair. I know that a lot of Arabs will hate me for saying this, but like, yeah, terrorism has been actually going in the Middle East for a very long time. I mean, do you remember the bombing of the King David Hotel? 92 British soldiers were killed. The bombing of the Cairo-Haifa train, over 200 soldiers, British soldiers killed. The assassination of Volker Bernadotte or Lord Moyen, all done by Israeli Zionist militias. They were the terrorists, and they were rewarded of having their own state. So I don't understand the double standard. As a matter of fact, one of the people who were in these terrorist attacks was Isaac Shamir, and he was on a terrorist list, English terrorist list, and he couldn't come to London until he became a prime minister. But to be fair, the Israeli government at the time, 1949, have actually declared the Stern gang as a terrorist group, and they arrested 2 of them. And they gave them very, 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 very severe sentences, 8 and 5 years, and then they were released after a month.
Do you see any blame on your side for any of this going back to 1948?
Yeah.
Genuinely. I mean,
what's your side? That's a really fucked up way to, like, yeah, hey, come on. You got to say something nice and then something mean about the other side and the other team, all right?
after a...
This is not about, fundamental principles. This is not opposing, say, like apartheid, no matter what country is enacting it, nothing to that effect. It's simply, hey, by the way, come on, say something nice, say something mean.
Empirical response. I mean, genuinely, when you look back at the history of this conflict, I mean, one of the most powerful pieces I've read actually about all this, or one that I just thought was very interesting, was a Jewish journalist called Jonathan Friedland at The Guardian. And he wrote a column where he said he could make a very powerful argument both for Israel and for the Palestinians, in which he could present a case that they were the more overriding victim of this whole conflict.
I'm aware of Jonathan Freeland.
What's your view of him?
Well, everybody knows he's a liberal Zionist. He's one of the most outspoken people in defending Israel. But
he wasn't. But my point was, he said that he could construct a case for Palestinians to have a genuine right to feel aggrieved.
You know what else?
Can you do the same the other way?
You know what else he said? He said, Israel has a very difficult choice of if they continue doing it in Gaza or not doing it in Gaza. All we can do is just acknowledge it and see it. And this is very privileged because he can do it because he's on the stronger side. And this is the thing. It's like, oh, we can acknowledge it, we see it, it's so bad, we're killing civilians. But what we can do, and then we raise our hands at the end and say like, it's too bad, it's inevitable. War is so bad, it's bad. But to your point, yeah, I think the Palestinians had done a grave mistake for not accepting the settlement that they were given by the UN partition. I mean, they were given 47% of their land. And let's go back. The Balfour Declaration was 1917. At the time, there was 60,000 Jewish people living in a 700,000 population, which makes them 8%. That number jumped from 8% to 30% after the Second World War and the Holocaust. Now, imagine yourself being a Palestinian, you're having all of these refugees coming to you, and then they're forming gangs and stealing your land and killing you. And then the UN said, like, I know what we can do. I'm going to give the people who just arrived 30 years ago 53 of the land, and I'm going to give the people who are already there, who form 70%, 47%.
But there are also, so I would say to you, there are also hundreds of thousands of Jewish people who were displaced from their homes in Arab countries. So was that wrong?
Well, I advise that you read Avi Shloim, who is a Jewish Iraqi, and he also, I think he's also British. That's not the timeline. The timeline was...
It is true, though.
Yeah, but that's not the timeline. The timeline is important. The timeline was the Zionist gangs, they were killed, they raped, they stole land, and then they basically evicted the people out of their land. And overnight, 750,000 Palestinians was displaced. Overnight. Over the few years, of course, now Israel is now the enemy. And there was a lot of rise of nationalism and yes, in some countries, that happened. But like,
was that wrong? Is my point.
Of course, but like, it is not the whole thing.
What I'm trying to do, and I'm not trying to trap you or trick you.
No.
I'm just trying to get you to concede that in a period since 1948, there have been things on both sides. I'm not trying to equivocate.
No, you are 100% doing it both sides of genocide, and it seems like he's doing it on every possible angle he can. It's like, okay, well, let's talk a little bit about land partition. You know, let's talk about the Balfour Declarations. And are you willing to say something nice and also something mean about your opponent or your other side? Because you are obviously on one side and they're on the other side. So can you say something nice, or at least say something critical about your own team as well? What is the fucking point of any of this as people are undergoing genocide right now?
Either. I'm just trying to get you to. I understand completely everything you've said and are going to say about Israel, and you're very implacable about that, and you have every right to be so. I get that. But can you find criticism of your own side in this argument, going back to 48, proper criticism, where if things have been done differently, perhaps we wouldn't be where we are?
Okay, so if you are British and you had 1 million Ukrainians arriving to your home, and then over 30 years, that number increased to 30% of the population, and then the UN gave you less than half of your country. Wouldn't you fight? Wouldn't you resist? But now it's our
That wasn't
fault.
my question.
What was your question?
Whether you can find anything to criticise.
I guess he doesn't want to answer that question.
Since
Give me
1948.
something to criticize.
No,
I mean, there's a lot to criticize.
You know the history better than anybody.
There is a lot to criticize. Of course, there's a lot of mistakes. I mean, the Middle East has been plagued by a lot of the military dictatorship, of course. I mean, but having mistakes we should not be penalized by having our land taken away from us just because the other side is stronger. Right? Because what are you telling your kids? If you're strong and you have enough arms and weapons, you can take whatever land you want. That's not why the UN was formed. That's not why the Security Council was formed.
When you heard that Sinwar, the Hamas leader, had been killed, what were your feelings about that?
Well, when I heard he was killed, of course, this is something that was actually, I said, oh, wow, that's actually, he survived all of that. But I think it was a huge mistake by the Israelis to release the footage, because now he's an icon, right?
Is he?
Well, I mean, again, someone's terrorist is someone else's hero, right?
Right. But all he did was lob a piece of wood at them. That was
yeah,
it.
well, I mean, he was also he was lost an arm and he was there, and it took them 3 tanks to bring down the house. I mean, hey, you can respect your enemy.
But when you saw the footage, for example, of Sinwar in one of the tunnels he'd helped create, spending the billions that have been given to Hamas.
Billions?
Well, they were given billions of dollars. And I would say...
Yeah, again, this is one of those moments, because I'd spoken a little bit about this earlier, and yeah, the same way that the United States basically targeted, say, someone like Saddam Hussein, Piers Morgan would love to put you in a position where it's like, hey, and are you defending Saddam Hussein, who just got taken out? And you're like, no, I'm not here to dispute whether or not this person is a bad dude or has done bad things. What I'm trying to explain to you is we were sold the narrative. We were told that this individual was a rich billionaire who was living in some mansion in either another country or a safe area or somewhere in a very lavish tunnel-like mansion structure, when it turned out that this person, in reality, was apparently fighting on the front lines, and the footage that just came out shows this person literally fighting to his last breath, and with every dying second that remained in his veins, he used that to continue to resist. And even if you hate the dude, and even if you think the guy is fundamentally evil, you have to admit that what is the purpose of that footage going to do, especially under a population undergoing a genocide, but inspire a lot of people, maybe, who now want to become resistance fighters, who now want to form Hamas or Hamas 2 or Hamas 3, or we don't know what'll come out of all this once, the settlements start to take shape and place and all that kind of stuff, even though, yes, Anthony Blinken has assured us that they're not going to allow Gaza to be resettled, even though, Ben Gvir is currently singing songs during the resettlement conferences that Israel's holding, and I have not seen a single piece of evidence that shows that the United States is going to impose or do anything to directly reign in Israel at this point. They're allowed to basically do whatever they want. So as long as that is the case, then yes, Israel is most likely going to settle that area. But in addition to all that, like, was he a rich billionaire somehow living off all the riches of his populace, where he's like literally the only person who had any money in Gaza, and that's the pathetic thing about Hamas all along, is that they had simply taken all the money away, all the resources away, and that's the reason why that region in the world suffered. And it's like, no, the reason why that region in the world suffered is that it was a concentration camp. It was an open air prison. It was literally, like, you can say like, oh well, people weren't literally in cages, and they had restaurants, and they had food and stuff like that. It's like, but all of that was controlled down to the calorie by Israel. Even if their soldiers left the region and decided that they're no longer going to occupy the Gaza Strip, they're still controlling everything that comes in and out of that strip. They're controlling all the food, the fuel, the water, the resources, everything. There was deplorable living conditions, across the board prior to the utter and complete destruction of the Gaza Strip. There was already monstrously high percentages of people who had unclean drinking water. There was already massive food insecurity. There was already really terrible impoverished conditions in that area, and that's not simply because the leader of Hamas was actually some rich billionaire.
Netanyahu was quite happy to do that because he wanted to create a split between Hamas and the Palestinian Authority. So I'm not.
So why are we blaming Hamas? Why are you not blaming Netanyahu?
No, I'm just saying that Hamas had an option of how to spend that money.
Yeah,
they were the government in power, and they chose predominantly to spend it on a tunnel system and arming themselves. When you see Sinwar walking through that tunnel safely with his wife and his kids and so on, and there's a load of money next to him.
A load of money?
It was a huge pile of cash next to where he was supposedly sleeping. When you see that, do you not think that he betrayed his own people?
No.
That they weren't able to use these tunnels, the Palestinians. He knew when he activated October the 7th and ordered it, what the reaction was likely to be. He was sentencing to death immediately thousands of his own people, none of whom...
This is a really bizarre line of rationale to be like... If he hadn't been such a greedy asshole, if he hadn't basically had this elaborate tunnel system, of which apparently only a few select members of Hamas were capable of using, and he hadn't hoarded all the wealth of the Gaza Strip for his own personal enrichment and finances, and then done October 7th, knowing full well that this could result in a massive backlash, then the entirety of the Gaza Strip might not be destroyed. Again, this is like the oppressor asking you to stop bullying yourself, stop bombing yourself. Like, this could end any single time, at any day. All the suffering could end if Hamas just returns the hostages, and the leader of Hamas just surrenders. Well, okay, most of the hostages are dead now, or returned through, again, the only thing that did successfully return large numbers, a ceasefire, and the leader of Hamas is dead. And so as the slaughter ended, no, it's ramping up right now. Every single day that goes by, I had to pull myself away from the entirety of the internet for a couple hours this morning, because once again I saw footages of that new child massacre, the new monstrous child massacre. And I know it's hard to keep track of all of them because they're happening every single day, but seeing, yes, the pile of dead kids' bodies and organs and fucking faces broke me, as it does sometimes. And so, like, this shit isn't ramping down. It's not like de-accelerating. They are accelerating their current extermination policies towards humanity. And so, what are we doing here? Why are you, in all your riches and comfort, sitting there across someone, directly kind of condescending to them, being like, your side? What, the humanitarian side, the side on the right of human rights, the one kind of internationally recognized, the whole purpose of the UN existing so that nation states don't do this to each other kind of side? Okay.
Were allowed, apart from the Hamas elements, to use the tunnel system. I mean, is that not a sickening betrayal of his people?
Well, let's talk about the billions of dollars who were what was actually used. I remember a report by Ben Shapiro, and he brought like videos of Hamas digging up tubes, water pipes, and then it's like, and they're using them as weapons. And they said, like, these are the money that was given to them by the EU, and they squandered it, they took the money. But the thing is, what Ben Shapiro didn't say, that he stole that report from Al Jazeera. He removed the narration, and what the narration was said, that this was actually pipes that was installed by the Israelis in order to steal the money from Gaza.
Okay, but
so there's a lot of lying in the thing.
I don't
idea...
dispute this line, but what you can't dispute, Bassem, is that clearly since 2005, Hamas has spent a fortune of money they could have spent differently with their people. They spent it on this sophisticated and extensive tunnel system.
The tunnel system that is bigger than the New York subway system?
It would appear so.
450 miles?
I don't know. Do you know how big it is?
450. I mean, nobody.
You know?
I think if there's 450 miles underneath the tunnel, we have seen droves and droves of tunnels. What we have seen is small rooms, very, very.
So you don't believe that there is?
No, I don't. No, I don't believe. Of course, there are tunnels, but I don't believe that they are like 450 miles, because that's ridiculous. If you want to understand, you tell me that Hamas, under siege, were able to build a subway system bigger than New York in less than 15 years? I don't think.
Did they serve their people, though, with how they spent their money?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I don't know. And the thing is, like, there's a lot of propaganda. I don't know how much they spend on themselves. I don't know how much they spend on the tunnels. I don't know how much they spend on the people. But the thing is, these are all side talks. The main talk is the daily killing that's happening all through. Like, I mean, yeah, they could be bad people. They could be horrible people. They could be corrupt people.
Could be or are?
They are. Okay? They are horrible. They are vampires. They're zombies.
But do you believe that? Or are you just saying that for performative reasons?
No, I'm saying that because, you know, again, I don't want to go and find the FBI at my door.
But I'd rather you were honest. I mean, surely we're at the stage of this war now, a year on, where
I know,
can
0 days.
find a lot to
this
criticise with
week.
Netanyahu and his government, and I can find a lot to criticise with Hamas, with Hezbollah, with Iran. I can find a lot to criticise all over the place. And I think that's part of the problem is it's just an extraordinary mess with a lot of people who've been behaving badly.
Right, so this is a form of genocide apologia. If you're going to consistently try and equate and try to find, you know, evil on both sides and be like, yeah, but, you know, one side did a bad thing. Can you acknowledge that? Okay, good. I'm glad you've condemned Hamas. That's the entire point of my show. That's all we do here is that we try to, again, say both sides have done some bad things. You can't both sides of genocide. You can't keep doing this, especially at this point. It's abhorrent. To continuously be like, we need to contextualize this, though. Really? Yeah. And would you say that Hamas has operated in the most humane way at all times? And then it's like, you're talking about a people that are being openly slaughtered right now before the eyes of the world. And you're trying to say, are they behaving in the most moralistic of ways? That's always been the argument put towards the actions of Palestinians or Palestinian resistance groups.
In my opinion, betraying their people and making it almost impossible to come together for peace.
So basically, we punish the Palestinians for being betrayed by Hamas, and we punish the Palestinians again by letting them get slaughtered every day.
You punish the Palestinians in the sense that you're exacting retaliation for a heinous terror attack on your people. That's what the Israelis say.
Fine. Okay.
Should they not have responded?
Who, Israel?
Yeah. On October the 8th, should their response have been to do nothing?
Oh,
I saw a headline today that was like, there's been over 130 children, just children killed in the West Bank since October 7th. That the West Bank, where again, Hamas is not in power. Like, framing it this way, like, Piers, if someone had slaughtered 130 children, you know, in a major city in the UK, would you think then that they had a right to retaliate for that? Is there any measure of response that can be done? Because the idea constantly is just that, hey, by the way, you will admit that, like, you know, this event is bad, this thing is bad, and so ultimately both sides, I think, have been doing some pretty fucked up stuff, and we just want the suffering to end. And it's like, who is causing the majority of the suffering? These are such disproportionate, like, you know, numbers. It's complete asymmetrical warfare, and it's not even like, you can't even really call it warfare. This is just at this point a mass extermination.
The question is like, what would I have done, right? Which is like one of the craziest questions ever. It's like, what would I have done? What would I have done if I magically got teleported into the body of a serial killer?
What should they have done?
Well, again, this is asking after the fact, Piers.
But what do you think now, looking back? What would have been a better course of action? Their argument, Israel, is they went after Hamas. They've just taken out the leader of Hamas, who was literally amongst people in Rafah, which was a refugee camp area. That's where he was hiding, and they killed him there. They say that justifies them going into Rafah. It's an arguable point, obviously, but you can't deny that Sinwar was...
And that was 40,000 confirmed dead Palestinians, majority women and children, was the cost of that. The collective punishment of every single civilian who lives in that region, half the population being children, but not having ever voted Hamas into power, all being mass slaughtered as a result. Again, well, I mean, justifiable in that one guy got taken out, and so Hamas lost their leader. I think that's never happened before.
Hiding there. They also say that all of what they've been doing is a response to what happened to their people, and that they have to stop the group that did that from doing it again, which they're wedded to doing.
So what is their proportionate response?
Well, that's been the question I've asked for a year.
Yeah, but like, you know,
I don't know the answer.
That question kind of lost its validity after 1 month of the war.
Well, I've seen you say, for example, you've been critical of me saying I only do what I do because I'm after clicks. I'm after.
I never said that about you.
You did.
No.
No, you did.
When?
We found it.
Where?
Let me find that clip. Where is it?
Where is it? Oh,
Not a clip. No, it's an interview. Where is it?
Oh, okay.
Here we go. Yeah. So you said this.
Yeah.
You said at the Arab Media Forum in June, I don't know why people care that Piers Morgan changes his opinion.
Yes.
He's a man who seeks trends and increasing viewership. It's true.
Yes.
As he hosts people and sits with them to raise viewership numbers. Yes. His opinion isn't important at all because he only cares about what is trending and what people will talk about. So it doesn't matter that he changed his opinion. Piers is a man who has a media platform on which we appear to convey our ideas to his viewers, nothing more.
And there's nothing wrong with that. By the way, that's your job, actually, to get clicks and views. Because the question I always ask is, what do you think of
But the
Piers?
implication of
does he change your mind? And I said, like, I don't care about him changing
I understand
his
that.
mind, because that's your job.
But the implication of what you were saying was that that's all I care about. And that I don't actually care about what I genuinely care about, which is trying to work out what the...
I hate watch a lot of people. I don't think I've ever encountered someone who tries to center themselves and their own feelings about, some of the most serious topics concerning humanity right now, like Piers Morgan does. It's always about me, Well, you said some mean things about me. Like Hassan comes on, he's like, you called me a propagandist. Do you take that back? I hope you know that I've actually been one of the only people who brings on a lot of Arab voices, Muslim voices, Palestinian voices on my show. So I'm a patron saint, wouldn't you say? Who gives a fuck? Like... You have your own show, Piers. You can do an episode where all you do is fawn over yourself and have your audience fawn over you anytime you want. You can be like, hey, on this episode, we're going to talk about how great I am, how amazing I am, how I'm capable of speaking to so many different people across the political aisle, how I'm the ultimate free speech guru, all that shit. You can do that whenever you want. Who gives a fuck?
World should think about this. What is the correct proportionate response from either side to any of the things that have happened? And I think it is morally complex. You find it morally more straightforward. I find it complicated. And I've wrestled with how I should think about this. I've gone on a bit of a journey. Now, it doesn't mean that, for example, I would find common ground with you about the way the Palestinian people have been.
Also, no one has to hold your hand through this. Coming to the conclusion that no country has a right to genocide, or coming to the conclusion, even if you don't believe that's what's taking place, that there shouldn't be an existence of apartheid states, of ethno-states that punish people of different religions or ethnicities or backgrounds, if you agree fundamentally in those principles, that's on you, especially as a fucking journalist, to come to those conclusions. If you're unable to do that, then maybe you'd have no business being on TV. Right? Like if it's like, I've had to wrestle. Yeah, you don't know my struggle, okay? This has been really tough to watch. Every day I parrot the same talking points that basically the IDF and mainstream American media do about how they have a right to defend themselves, and then someone will come on here and bring a photo of all these dead kid babies, and then I'm like, well, that's not great, and they're like, it isn't, and this is what is happening, and this is happening during a mass starvation. This is forced starvation, and this is something that has been recognized internationally by nearly every single human rights groups that are looked at as crimes against humanity. The collective punishment of, again, civilians, the complete destruction of every single facet of society. Like, we're talking the bombing of schools, children's hospitals, orphanages. Like, there's nothing. They have destroyed it. Like, you realize that's bad. All right, well, it's complicated. And boy, it's been harder. They're making it really hard, for me to keep parroting the same talking points rather than actually learning anything.
Been treated for many decades. I do think it's been a form of occupation.
Form of?
Yeah.
Not an occupation. Not a full-blown occupation.
As I said to Israelis when they come on, I don't know how you can argue that it's an occupation. I know you moved out in 2005, but the reality is once this war started...
They didn't move out.
Well, once they formally moved out.
You basically went out of the room and you locked the room and you basically controlled the perimeter of the room.
I was about to say, after October the 8th, when they began to turn off the water supply, the food supply, the power and so on, it was quite...
Right. You understand what the implication is there then? That they were controlling that. That they, while maybe not having a permanent military occupational presence in that region, have been controlling everything that gets in and out, down to counting fucking calories that the citizens receive, keeping them in perpetual states of poverty and malnourishment, And with water insecurity. There was monstrous water insecurity prior to this. Now it's so devastating that it's gotten to a point where you hope for rainfall in order to be able to get enough water to live. You hope you don't get sniped by an IDF soldier as you're trying to get a couple fish maybe out of the ocean to feed your family. And he's still like, it does look bad.
Clear they still wield power.
But that was going on since 2006.
No, I understand.
That never stopped.
So I'm agreeing with you.
You know what Dove wise...
I'm agreeing with you.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, clearly that is a form of occupation. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the power
It's an
to do it.
occupation, not a form.
Yeah. I mean, look.
It's like saying it's a form of terrorism.
Okay, I take that point.
Yeah.
Let's call it an occupation. And it has to end. And in my view, I've always hoped and believed there should be a two-state solution. Do you believe that is even remotely achievable now?
I don't know, because the thing is, you created a mess. You completely destroyed all kinds of...
We say me. What do you mean me?
No, not you. Not you.
Right.
I mean, I'm like you as...
Don't look at me when you say that. I'm not creating any mess.
Like you created the mess as like you as the stronger part in the conflict. The thing is, it is very... it's very disappointing to see... I know that you mean well, but you are trying to two-sided. I found this is no, but one.
But there are two sides.
No, yes, but one side of
you're too one-sided, and understand why.
Okay.
You know, your wife has family in Gaza. I get it, right? You're going to be one-sided.
That's so fucking condescending. Shouldn't you care about these kind of issues because you just care fundamentally about universal principles? It's not like, well, I mean, like. I do know that you have a horse in this race, technically. I mean, like, there's a reason why you have some skin in the game, that you are married to a Palestinian, so obviously this is personal to you, and it's clouding you. It's clouding your judgment. You're unable to actually say anything bad about Hamas, which is deeply disappointing to me, because I would like you to both sides this, as I do, so I can feel comfortable in my day-to-day and go about everything I do, knowing that I'm a really good person and the best journalist, and everyone loves me. So can you please give me that now?
That's why I've asked you at the start of the interview, when you look back over since 1948, do you find anything to criticise on your side? And your inability to articulate any response to that makes me think you are too one-sided. Do you accept that?
If I met Mike Tyson on the streets and I kicked him, and he responded by kicking me in the face, killing me, yes, I did, but like he has a lethal weapon, his hands.
Yeah.
Israel is 1,000 times stronger. And they have the whole of the support, all of the money.
But here's my analogy for you with the Mike Tyson thing. If you had taken thousands of people and you'd gone to Mike Tyson's house and you committed atrocities on his extended family and friends.
Okay, so again, if you're like, well, I got to recontextualize this, why don't we do that? Okay, well, prior to him kicking Mike Tyson had the locks and keys on his home, locking inside of his home, and then in there, and his family was preventing and controlling any resources and supplies that get in and out of that house, keeping them in perpetual starvation, poverty, that kind of stuff. And then after begging, pleading multiple times, both with Mike Tyson and the international community of people who know him, saying, can anyone please stop this? We need help. Eventually, one of the people in the house got out, escaped, and kicked Mike Tyson in the shin. And Mike Tyson punched him and killed him. There you go. You can't keep being like, well, history began on October 7th, right? That was the start.
Raping them and killing them and setting people alive. Well, I know you don't believe there was any sexual abuse.
No, I don't believe.
Well, there was sexual abuse.
We can talk about that.
Well, we will come to that, but I think it's inarguable. It's been investigated by the United Nations. Established
have
by
you read the report?
Well, I've had journalists who I respect more than any in the world.
Have you read the report?
There is indisputable evidence of sexual abuse.
Okay, let's talk about that when it comes.
We will. Well, and we'll agree to differ, I'm sure. But my point is, I believe it has been established. But putting aside that, you don't dispute people were killed. You don't dispute people were set on fire. You don't dispute any of the stuff that happened on October the 7th that we saw through Hamas's own cameras, right?
Yeah,
you don't dispute what we saw with our own eyes.
I know what I've seen, and of course, and as a matter of fact, I've seen many of them. Yes, it's terrible.
Okay,
but
so my point is, if you did all that to Mike Tyson's family, and then he,
but I'm not gonna be.
Well, hang on.
It's a one-to-one man. It's not 1,000 to 1.
But if you did all that, and then he punched you in the face and killed you, would you feel that was justified?
No, but the thing is,
no,
sir, you're trying to.
You're
trying to.
Well, I'm throwing your analogy back at you.
You're trying. No,
this is the most pathetic attempt to be like, well, okay, I'm going to take your analogy, but I'm going to recontextualize it. And so, hey, would Mike Tyson not be justified in killing you again if you just kicked him in the shin after all that terrible stuff you did? Because again, that's where history began.
It's not the wrong guy. I said like me and Mike Tyson, man to man, and he's much stronger than me. I'm not going to show up with like 1,000 person. So if you want to do the analogy, you need to modify the analogy again. And the thing is, I think it's like we always ask what Israel should do, but we never ask what should the Palestinians do. Because, I mean, I know that there's like really great examples. I mean, there are some peaceful examples. There's a beautiful boy called Mido. He's 19 years old. He's an exchange student in Texas. And he was moved from one safe zone to the other, and he ended up into a safe zone, and he was farming. He had a beautiful, beautiful garden. And he was farming, and he was blogging about it. His mom died because of lack of medicine, but he continued to farm. And you know what happened to him? He was killed in an airstrike. You asked me about the Nelson Mandela, and there's a man called Ahmed Abu Trema. He was inspired by the civil rights movements and the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa, and he toured the churches and the schools and the colleges in the United States, and he came back, and Israel hit him in an airstrike, killing 5 of his family, including his son, and he was injured. If Palestinians march, they get killed. If they throw a stone at a tank, they get killed. If they sit at home quietly, someone will come in and take their home away, and they kill them. If someone just like picking up olives, that they will kill him. So what would they decide? And I don't know, like...
But it sounds to me like what you're doing, you're constructing...
That's like I'm justifying October 7th, right?
No, I'm going to put words in your mouth, but it sounds to me like you're saying, what else did you expect?
Yeah, what else did you expect? If you treat people like animals, they will behave like animals, Piers.
So you accept they behave like animals?
Yeah, some of them did, yes. Some of them did, yes. Like, yeah,
I mean, there were 3,000 of them.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
entering at 13 different points.
So 13,000...
He's still doing this, like this deep in. And again, it's one of those things where I wonder, do liberal Zionists not, like, they don't see the footage, or they see it and they instantly just click away, or if they do see it, they're just like, well, that's, yeah, obviously bad. Yes, I see the mass graves. I see the rape and torture centers. Yes, I see the complete and utter destruction of everything that remained there. Yes, I see the mass marches of people forcibly without any calories being moved from one end to the other, who are all suffering from shock, PTSD and stuff like that. Yes, I've seen that video footage of the little girl carrying another little girl's body, and her feet are bleeding because she's trying to get to their mother. Yes, I've heard the endless stories. Yes, I see the lines of starvation, and I see the desperation. Yes, I've seen all that, which is why it leads me to the conclusion that Hamas should surrender and return the hostages, and this can all be over with. Like, is this the only way that their minds are processing the information, or getting through with it, or still at this like moment in history, sitting there across the table from someone else being like, well, I mean, you can still say that October 7th was bad, right? Sure. Is what's happening literally as we're having a conversation right now a crime against humanity of the highest order of magnitude? How many people need to die? How many bodies do you need? Like, you know, if it's like, oh, well, only 42,000 people have been confirmed killed so far. It's like, yeah, the Lancet estimated that it was far higher than that. So did the American doctors. They put their estimations into the hundreds of thousands. And what if it was 500,000 at this point? What if 500,000 people have already been killed, either through, again, bombing, crushing, starvation, disease, whatever it is that enough for you to realize? Like, are you still going to be like, it is bad, I agree, that 500,000 people dying is a tragedy, and half of those are children. That is a terrible thing that has happened. The suffering has to end, but we do need to contextualize this and realize that, again, on October 7th, bad things happened. And can you admit that? Are you able to admit that so I can feel good about myself?
3,000?
3,000 Hamas. A 13 entry
So
points
for that, you
Israel.
killed 50,000 people.
Well, they killed 1,200 people. They kidnapped over 250.
No. I said like Israelis, for that, they killed 50,000
Well, hang on.
people.
I'm about to give you the numbers as we now believe them. So 1,200 people were killed, of which 400 were believed to be military. Then you had nearly 7,000 more people who were wounded, many of them irrevocably badly. You had over 250...
You could only say this with a straight face if you've completely dehumanized Palestinians as, like, you know, a monstrous racist that someone like Piers Morgan is. Because otherwise, how can you sit across the table if someone's like, yeah, I'm not here to justify what happened on October 7th. I'm saying, does that justify then what has happened now with, again, over 42,000 people confirmed killed? He's like, well, hold on. I'd like more contextualization first, just so we truly know how bad October 7th was. And it's like, okay, I'll acknowledge that October 7th was bad. Like, no one wants to see, you know, innocent people killed. A lot of innocent people are being killed, literally, as we speak right now. Like that, and it has not stopped. The immense amount of suffering, this hell on earth, this you know, event that you keep trying to downplay.
people kidnapped, including a baby who's never been returned, Holocaust survivors, grandparents, and so on. And my question is really...
If you look at that list of confirmed murders in these massacres so far of Palestinians who have died, I don't know if you've watched the footage of all the names being read. Al Jazeera has published that list. For the first couple minutes, it's just babies. It's just like you're looking, again, just like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of names go by. All of those are under 1 year old. And it's one of those things where it's like, in what world do we live where you were trying to say that, like, hey, by the way, there was apparently a baby that died or was kidnapped on that day? It's like, yeah, who's on the other side of kidnapping babies? Who's team baby kidnapper? Go speak to them. I think that's the person you're looking to interview. Does any of this justify the mass massacre of, again, thousands of children?
I'm not sure what you would have expected Israel to do, but more pertinently, what should they have done?
Well, I don't know, Piers, because...
But you've got to have some idea. You can't just say what you did is wrong.
Yeah.
You've got to have a thing of, given what happened to them, given that huge blow to their country and to their people, given that Hamas said we're going to keep doing this to you, what should Israel have done?
So let's nuke Gaza, right? I mean, that's like...
They haven't nuked Gaza.
Well,
they could have done.
They have dropped
They could have done.
Yeah,
my argument to those who say it's genocide...
Thank you. By the way, I for one, I would like to say my deep appreciation for the IDF, Benjamin Netanyahu, and the Israeli government for not nuking Gaza. You showed restraint. That certainly was something that apparently was on the table, or something that people thought is a legitimate tactic that could have been employed here. Again, to drop on a mostly civilian population of people who are being forcibly starved. You didn't do that. So yeah, I guess most moral army in the world.
Genocide is, if they'd wanted to, Israel has the ability to blow up the whole of Gaza now. They haven't done that.
So...
If you really are genocidal, why wouldn't you do that?
If people are still around, it's not a genocide. If monkeys are still alive, how there's no...
Well, you have 2 million people residing in Gaza, of which over 42,000 have been killed.
Yes. Yeah, okay. So what's...
Is that genocide after a year?
So what's the threshold?
Well, it's not. My point is that if you're waging genocide, Israel has the capability to kill all 2 million people very quickly.
How about too much killing? Is that good?
I think there has been too much killing.
Yeah. How about extreme determination of life?
I don't think it's a genocide.
I mean, if you don't like the G word, we can.
Yeah, but I don't think it's a genocide, is it?
We're wasting our time in definitions.
What is? Well, we're not, because it's important. Because what is genocidal is what Hamas has said they want to do to Israel.
What did they say to do?
They want to eradicate Israel.
Is according to their charter?
Yes.
Which charter?
Well, their original charter said that.
And then what happened in 2017?
Well, I'd rather go forward to what happened.
No. But what happened?
No, hang on.
Like because you're.
I know they rewrote the charter.
Yeah, but why don't you say that?
Because it's overtaken by what happened on October the 7th.
So it doesn't count?
No, because Bassem. Because
I mean, you're telling people as if this is the status quo.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying their original charter stated eradication of Israel, and the Hamas spokesman said after October the 7th. We want to keep doing this again and again and again. He said it on camera. That is an existential threat to all Israelis.
Well, there's a lot of horrible things that Israelis say on camera, Piers. But I agree. But the only difference is that Israel acts on it, and they have the power to do it.
But I've already told you that I believe that Ben Gvir and Smotrich have used genocidal language.
It's not just them. And you know it's not just
them.
No,
I accept
it's a whole apparatus, a whole system.
They're the two worst offenders in the government.
But the rest of the government is terrible.
Yeah, so my question is again, and I think it's an important one, is I get that you don't think they should have done this the way they've done it, Israel. But given they had to respond, how should they have responded? Because when they responded in a more precision way, and we can come to you, I know you don't agree with me about this.
I think that, like, honestly, right now, Bassem either is like burning out, having to speak to someone who has like completely turned off their humanity or something, because just like it's beyond the pale to try and be like, well, yeah, the 42,000 people have been killed that are confirmed, and I'm saying to you that's bad for sure, but I'm also saying that, you know, there's a lot of things that I don't think you're willing to acknowledge on the other end. That is like the fact that he's still doing this a year in, like while they're having this conversation. This is literally what the scene is to the remaining people who have survived this year of bombing and starvation is again, mass lines. Thousands of Palestinians crowd in front of bakeries in the Gaza Strip to try and obtain bread in the shortage of flour. This is what is happening in the Israeli siege.
في جنوب القطاع هكذا أصبح جنوب قطاع غزة الممتلئ بالنازحين. هي الحصول على رغيف الخبز الأيام القادمة صعبة إذا ظل الحال على هذا. طابور الخبز جنوب قطاع غزة. جنوب قطاع غزة هكذا أصبح. هذا المشهد.
Like, this is what mass starvation looks like. Being enabled by, again, U.S. weaponry, being funded by, you know, the West. This is what is taking place right now. In the background, if you can't notice it, again, complete and utter destruction and devastation. People clamoring and trying to squeeze in to get just one little piece of bread to try and get a couple calories that they're going to have to try and share with their other family members. Granted, they're not so hungry that they end up eating more than they're supposed to. Like, this is the current state of what is taking place there. To sit there in your comfortable fucking studio, sit across from someone and be like, well, as a person who's married to a Palestinian, who has a Palestinian wife, clearly you're biased in this, so I'm going to try and show you how to be perfectly rational and centered, as I am, a real journalist. But can you not admit that, you know, some of the things that Hamas has done are bad? Like, again, this kind of stuff I think would have been distasteful to have been doing like a month after October 7th. You know, immediately once the announcement comes that we're cutting off all food, all water, all medicine, all fuel, once they started the mass bombing campaigns, the mass slaughtering of children, all that kind of stuff. And I'm saying this with respect to the fact that this is, again, a liberal Zionist or a centrist who's obviously going to be very biased in this. But even at that point, to come to the realization that, holy shit, this is really bad. I need to kind of stop doing this thing. Unless, again, you've just normalized this racism so much that it's like, well, yeah, but they're not really human. Because if they were, I would never be doing this apples to apples, orange to orange thing, because it makes me look really fucked up. To be like, well, yeah, collective punishment, that's fucked up. Yeah, mass starvation, that's fucked up. Yeah, me saying 1,200 people lost their lives on October 7th, are you willing to say that was bad? And it's like, then what about the 42,000 people who have been confirmed killed? And that number could be, again, hundreds of thousands. We don't know at this moment.
But I think you criticised Bill Maher for saying that what they did with Hezbollah was, you know, military success. Well, indisputably, from a military perspective, it was successful. They managed to be very precise in targeting 3,000 members of Hezbollah at the same time through pages. As an active...
The fuck are you talking about? That was a mass terrorism event. There were children who died. Numbers of healthcare workers and medical professionals who, yes, were using pagers the way they had always been doing. That was not a precision strike. Jesus.
Military strategy, it was very effective. It did kill a lot of civilians as well.
Yeah,
and that's obviously
too bad. Of course.
No, it is too bad. All civilian death is too bad. But my point is, if they had done that strategy in Gaza, where they had gone after Hamas through paper.
Yeah. I think, honestly, Bassem should have just reverted back to the original interview character, because that seems to be the only thing that Piers Morgan is capable of interacting with. He's just going to sit there and constantly be like, no, I'll grant you. Yeah, civilians dying is bad. I'm not here to, you know, promote the death of civilians. But you have to admit, if Hamas just operated the way Israel did, if they had done their precision strikes in the same way, if they had targeted it in the same methodology, using the same technology, what I'm saying is that essentially they should have the same resources and be able to do the same things, which I don't know why they're not doing that. You know, maybe instead of using all these crude weapons or using suicide vests or bombs or you know, these missiles that aren't exactly as precise, they should be using U.S. weaponry, U.S.-made weapons, and then maybe they could be a little bit more tactical in their warfare. Have you ever considered this?
Or whatever. I still think you would have said it was wrong.
Israel is the strongest part in this, and they have unlimited supply of money and power.
Yeah.
And as you say in superhero movies, with great power there's great responsibility. And the whole idea of like, how could they respond? And then we sit there discussing this while Israel actually responding on a daily basis. By the time we finish this interview...
It's a valid question, isn't it? It's a valid question about how you think they should have done it differently. Or you think they should have done nothing.
No, I didn't say that they said nothing. But
so
Israel has the technology and the ability to do more surgical attacks than this. But to decimate a whole region, displacing 100% of the population, I don't think we...
I think it's wrong.
Good.
I agree with you.
Good.
Wow.
Good.
What a fucking hero. Look at him. But I am going to continue to use up half of this fucking interview to continue to get you to give some context. It's wrong, but we do need to keep talking about how evil and bad Hamas is. I know. And I'm not saying it's good what Israel's doing either. Both sides could be doing wrong. I just really want to keep talking about how bad Hamas is, and can we just give them and give this topic more validity and time, and just go in circles over and over until you get to admit. I want to hear you say you condemn Hamas again. It's the only thing that actually gets me to be quiet for a couple minutes. You know, it's my Pavlovian dog response.
Now, it's not on me to decide to Israel what to do. Maybe Israel could check with itself and see what had led to that. Yes, what happened is terrible, but they need to discuss. But like, you know, the thing is, there's a roadblock between us, Piers, because it seems that we are far apart of actually what happened October 7th. And I know there's a lot of people here came and talk about what happened October 7th. I would like to have a chance to tell you what, with my point of view, what me and my people think. And
Go
you
on,
can,
tell me. Tell me what you think happened.
So there are three big things that made the world accept what is happening now in Palestine. And they talk like, what will happen now? What can we get it? Three things. The story of what they decapitated babies.
That was not true.
Good. So why didn't the Western media refute it? Why didn't they
Well,
pull
it was
back?
refuted very quickly.
Really?
Yes.
But
Very quickly.
how many
What are you
times you
talking
said,
about?
how many times the Western media has used that?
President of the
Until
United
today,
States
Mike
regurgitated
Johnson, the
it.
Speaker of the House, is still repeating it. Until now,
Well,
Benjamin
it's not
Netanyahu.
true.
I know, but it was. You
But it has
understand?
been discounted by the media.
No, not really.
It has.
Not really. Not really. Not really. And it didn't. And in the discounting and refuting, and I think when you have an apology or a retraction,
I was
it has to be.
Yeah, but I was accused of saying it. I never said it.
You said.
Then I
Yeah, so you can go watch the old original Bassem Youssef versus Piers Morgan video on youtube.com/@the Times. But I did pull up the clip. He's, again, unable to take any kind of retraction or criticism or recognize the shit that he spews out there.
didn't say it.
You said, it came to me as a revelation that I read about 40 killed, 40 murdered babies. Some of them are decapitated.
Yeah, maybe in that, yeah.
You said
Which
that.
were early reports.
With John Collins.
Yeah.
Right?
Which were early reports.
I understand.
Which turned out not to be true.
I know, but like
Right.
but you understand the shock, the initial shock that made the public turn a blind eye of what's happening. Like, I mean, if I was like a European, it's like, oh my God.
But
of course they should
I
kill
would
them.
throw back at you, Bassem, this. I don't know if you've seen all the GoPro camera footage from Hamas that they broadcast to the world, but I have seen a lot of it.
Me
now.
too.
And
I have them. I've seen them.
so I think splitting hairs, which is what I would call it, over the nature of the depravity, given the way that they openly boasted and gleefully conducted so much depravity, I just think it's a bit pointless. It's like, what's the point?
So let's talk
what you're
about-
trying to say is, yes, they were barbaric. Yes, they were disgusting. They may not have done this precise thing, so therefore I give them a pass.
But no, but that matters. I know what, because if I came here on your show and I told you 5 million children were slaughtered in Gaza, what would you tell me, Piers? You said, no, there are only 16
I
or
agree.
17,000 people.
Facts matter.
Because facts matter. Because here's the difference between...
But I told you I agree with you.
No, but here's the thing. The difference between killing children and decapitating babies, the image of decapitating a baby, that makes this an
But kidnapping a baby is okay.
Never.
But they kidnapped a baby.
You see, that's this. You got coming down to. You're coming back to like.
No, I'm saying, what's the difference?
No, the difference is.
You kidnap a baby and take it away from it.
One baby versus thousands of babies. That's the difference here. Everyone agrees with you. Killing babies is bad. We should kill less babies. Great. You're brilliant. What a revelation. Whoa, did you think of this? Are you the first person to come up to this conclusion?
Yeah, and but you decapitate 40 babies? That's terrible, right? I mean, the thing is, both of them are terrible.
You're trying to, if you don't mind me saying, what you're trying to do is say, well, they weren't quite as medievally barbaric as that, but they did do this, and that's not as bad. And I'm saying to you, actually, it is as bad.
Yeah, one person,
kidnapping a baby,
one person killed, one person
and they
kidnapped.
did did behead people.
Where?
On October the 7th.
When?
Multiple reports
Babies?
of beheadings.
Babies?
I didn't say babies. I said they did behead people.
Why would
So
they?
is beheading an adult worse or better than a baby?
Like, how many decapitated babies, Palestinians, have you seen already on television?
Yeah, way too many.
Yes.
Disgusting.
Yes. Again.
But I can say both are disgusting. Can you?
Yes.
You do?
Of course.
So you accept people were beheaded?
But
So wait, if you accept that it's bad in general to slaughter innocent civilians, then why in the fuck are we having this discussion? That like, yes, it's bad, universally. So on one end, thousands and thousands and thousands of civilians are being slaughtered. You are pointing out a couple cases.
Again, media.
Do you accept people were beheaded? on October the 7th?
I haven't seen anyone beheaded.
So no evidence of any...
I've never seen it.
What do you think happened then to all these people?
Oh, they were shot point blank. They were, some of them... A couple
None were
of them,
beheaded. You don't believe those reports?
I don't believe them, yeah.
Come on.
But like even in one or two, it's terrible, of course. But like, okay, you go in. I mean, I don't understand. Like, my point is, Piers, is that on October 7th, there's a lot of very, very sensational report that made people turn a blind eye of what's going in Gaza. One of them is the beheaded babies, right?
But that was discounted so quickly.
No.
It was, I remember.
Well, so why is Mike
The
Johnson
President of the
still
United
doing it
States
and saying it?
I've not
regurgitated
seen him
it.
do that, but if he is, he's wrong.
Yeah, but many of them still. That is actually the narrative. That's the narrative. That's how we
I've
show
not
the
seen
public.
anyone in official...
So that's one thing. This is the decapitated. But the second thing, the Hannibal Directive. Low-key sat here in my chair, and you talked to him, and you said you read a piece of Haaretz saying that investigation if the IDF ordered Hannibal Directive to be used, adding that they didn't know how many soldiers were killed. But it was used. And then 2 minutes later, he said, like, there's a lot of documentation. And he said, like, I just read it to you. It's never happened. No, it happened, Piers. Now, in the same report that you quoted...
I did later in the interview tell him that I knew that there had been reports in Haaretz that had happened.
Yes, and there is another...
But just to be clear, that's not been admitted by the Israeli government.
Yeah, well,
I'm not saying it didn't happen.
Well, they're liars.
Yeah, but I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm just saying I did say to Loki that there is reporting in Haaretz, which is one of the big Israeli media publications, that it had happened and that order had been given. It has been unequivocally denied by Israel.
Yeah,
that's my point.
I know, okay.
Right. But my point about what Hamas did is almost all of it is indisputable because they gleefully broadcast it to the world. These things.
Why do you think so many people globally are so enraged by this? It's available on all social media. Every day that goes by, like, there is a non-stop flood of massacres that we can all see with our own eyes. There was a new one today, again, in a school where a lot of children were killed. And it's one of those things where, like, well, I mean, we can see what Hamas did, and then we can certainly condemn that. So, but I don't know about the rest of it.
Things are not up for debate. They went house to house.
I never deny that, and I'm not defending it.
So trying to equivocate with
no, I'm not equivocating.
The scale of the barbarity.
No, the scale is important. The scale is important because if you came into the first of all, the original number was 1,400. It was down now to 1,200, and then it down to 1,129. That is the final official number. One baby was killed, Mila Cohen, 10-month-old,
and one kidnapped.
One kidnapped.
Right.
All right, and 12.
Hi, Liv. Good to see you. Hope you're all doing wonderful. Sorry, I'm just burning out on listening to Piers. We're watching Piers Morgan debate Bassem Youssef for the 3rd time, and unlike the first 2 times, Piers Morgan seems to be really dead set in consistently trying to equate morally, the death of. I don't know what his maths is because he's such a racist that has dehumanized Palestinians, where he's being told, 52,000 people is what Bassem Youssef said, and then Piers will be like, yeah, but what about October 7th? Did you not know? But anyways, can everyone go to twitch.tv/live agar and go give her a follow back, and thank you so much. It's great to see all of you. Welcome. We're still dealing with the propaganda machine. You've been raided on YouTube by the Vanguard. Thank you, Vanguard, for the YouTube raid. Appreciate that as well.
12 kids were killed between the age of 1 to 9, and 36 were killed between 9
But you don't believe that any women were sexually abused, right?
Okay, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
But before that, I just want to mention something about because that's important. This is the pictures. You know this picture, right?
Is this burnt out cars after October?
Yes. Okay. This is the parent. All right. And then we should believe that Hamas went in with AK-47 and caused that kind of damage.
Have you seen the footage of them actually going car by car doing that kind of thing?
Yeah, but they didn't. This is burn and destroy.
How do you know how many they did?
Like, do you know what a person with have you not ever seen video footage or YouTube videos of people shooting cars with guns? I'm not saying that they didn't shoot cars with guns. I'm not saying you can't shoot cars with guns. But what is the photo revealing to you? When you look at that, it's like, yeah, I mean, bullet holes, for sure.
clean up your room.
I'm sure a couple of them maybe successfully shot a gas tank or two, and that made some of the cars explode. Certainly.
Does this look like AK-47 thing?
Looks like a bunch of cars have been set on fire, yeah.
Yeah, set on fire. Okay, this, and then a few, like, I know...
What's your argument that Israelis did all that themselves?
This is pictures for something called the Highway of Death from Iraq. This is the same thing. This is Apaches. These are Apaches, right? So this is actually cars.
Right, but have you
Fired
seen
by
the
the
footage
Apaches.
of Hamas going car to car?
Yeah, killing them with machine guns.
And setting fire to the cars?
Yeah, but that is not the
Actually,
actual...
that is exactly how they
Yeah, that is like a car of an Apache. These are the Apaches.
Well, it's also the look of a car that's been set on fire.
Yeah, but that doesn't cause that
You're
kind
just,
of
you're
generation.
just surmising, you're guessing.
No, I'm not guessing.
Why are you trying to excuse what Hamas did?
One of them is... Well, I'm not excusing.
He's got literally nothing. He's just flailing every 2 seconds. It's like, well, why are you defending Hamas? And he's like, I'm not. I'm trying to point out to you that there are elements of this, the official story and the official narrative that we've been given, where now there's evidence that has come out by, yes, reporting done by Haaretz, which is, again, a publication that comes out of Israel, that has pointed towards that there was a directive utilized during this in which they may have killed some of their own people in an attempt to try and stop Hamas, that this is done with weaponry that Hamas may not have had access to, is what I'm trying to tell you right now.
Right.
I'm talking about facts.
Well, these aren't facts. This is just you saying,
well,
look at these pictures, look at those, they look quite similar.
At least...
Have you seen many burned out cars in your life? Because I have.
Really, and I have two. In the revolution, I had many. Yeah, but that's...
And they didn't look like that?
But this is Apaches.
Or it's burnt out cars.
So many burnt cars with them. That's...
Yeah, there were a lot. They went car to car to car.
Yeah.
They were literally stopping cars and killing people and burning them.
Interesting, yes.
Yeah, well, why wouldn't you believe it? They wanted us to believe that. They wanted to show the world that.
Well, at least there is a shred of doubt.
It seems, well, there's not really. What you're trying to do, Bassem, and I understand it, but what you're trying to do is you're trying to put a little protective shield up to what Hamas did. And my response is, I don't know why you would do that, because Hamas didn't want any protective shield to what they were doing. They were gleeful about it. They showed the world in live.
I think it's almost at this point, especially for someone as like disgusting as Piers Morgan, it's completely futile to try and be like, well, let's recontextualize this event that you care very deeply about and try to point out that the official story was not 100% the narrative that we've been told. No one is trying to downplay the severity of, a child being killed, of people being kidnapped, of civilians, again, being targeted or killed, being shot, all that kind of stuff. No one's trying to downplay any of that. But at this point, it's grotesque, fundamentally grotesque, as we were witnessing, like in 4K for the world to see. Every single person who wants to has access to witnessing all of this happening in real time right now, the horrors and atrocities. The order of magnitude is beyond the pale. So, like, get past that, otherwise Piers will spend, again, the majority of this, the 40 minutes of this, he's going to spend constantly being like, do you condemn Hamas? You know, give the dog what he wants. He needs to hear the bells, so like give him his little treat, and then all of a sudden right afterwards you can then move on to discussing other shit. You could then be like, all right, so now that we both acknowledge that killing babies is bad, and we both agree on that, I didn't know we would come to that conclusion, but it's astonishing. But yeah, so we're both on board with that. Killing children is wrong. Cool. So the numbers should speak for themselves at this point, even if you don't want to believe, you know, the estimations by the Lancet or the 99 doctors that have arrived back into the US to pen a letter to the administration begging them to stop arming this genocide. Even if you don't want to listen to any of that, we can look at the official numbers that have come out that have been confirmed and internationally recognized, that we have 42,000 people that have currently been slaughtered. Of that, half the population, of course, is children. 2/3 of that number has been confirmed to be women and children. So we're talking about thousands of children slaughtered. Not one baby, okay? As you keep pointing out, it's like a baby was killed. Okay, that's bad. And again, unless you think of these as lesser humans, unless you think of these as unworthy people, then there is no world in which you can sit there and make these kind of arguments. Like, if you had... if America had tried to do a strike on a country, say trying to take out an MS-13 insurgent in Mexico, and in doing so, they accidentally killed a handful of innocent people, but they were like, well, this was a precision strike. We were trying to do what we were going to do. And in turn, Mexico carpet bombs and destroys all of Texas, like literally just bombs the fuck out of it until it was non-existent. I know this would never work. This scenario doesn't really exist because of the difference in the military power, but just think for a second, if that had happened, would you be sitting there then saying, yes, but I need to recontextualize this for you? that, like, it's really bad what happened to America, all that bombing, all those people, the fact that Texas doesn't exist and the citizens in there are starving and forcibly moved from one end to another. But we do need to think about that original strike that America did, and on that little group of civilians, and how bad that was. And I needed to keep talking about that. You would never do that because, again, this is how he views, as a racist, this is how he views the difference in lives. It was so satisfying to see Cornel West say to his face, he's like, you just value Israeli lives more than you value Palestinian lives. I mean, we could probably at this point figure out the actual math of what he sees, right? Like, he sees 1,000, Palestinian babies have equal worth to one Israeli baby, and that's his ratio. So that's how he's worked out and calculated. That's the value of those children versus the value of one child.
Streaming exactly what they were doing. They were proud of their depravity. You don't need to defend it.
I'm not defending it
or downgrade it, or diminish it,
I'm talking
or
about
reduce
facts.
it.
I'm talking.
Well,
let's talk
about.
Amazing, because that's all Piers has been doing this entire time to the war crimes of Israel.
Hey, if you'd like to unlock secret bonus episodes as well as uncensored content, go to patreon.com/The Serfs. This show is produced by Anna Loves Riley, Arian McCarthy, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Hagbard Celine, Jimmy Sombrero, Multimondi, Omni, Political Puppy, Preston Kroll, Quiet 185, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demel, Travis McClinton, Trinself, Words Greenwood, with additional support coming from all of these amazing human beings right here.